I've been helping people build sick physiques for almost 10 years now, and this is the 5-step process that's going to guarantee that you get closer to your dream physique by the end of this year. This is not a video for New Year's resolutions. Great physiques are not for people that rely on empty motivation like resolutions. If you're watching this, it's because you're already motivated, you're already putting in the work, you want to see better results, insane results, you need better clarity, you need to simplify things in a world that likes to make them complex. And you need to master the boring basics that lead to exceptional results. This video will do exactly that for you, so let's jump in. Now, first things first, you need a roadmap. Many people fail before they even start because they don't have clear direction on where they're going. They also don't have a proper expectation or timeline for how long that's going to take. Yes, getting in the gym and eating clean is better than nothing. But again, this is for people who want to build great physiques. That's a big difference from just general population fitness and wellness goals. So you want to take your physique to the next level, it takes more precision and better goal setting and a clear roadmap. So how do you set your roadmap? It all starts with understanding where you are right now and where you want to go. We first have to determine, are you going to cut, bulk, or recomp? And depending on the one that you choose right now, how long will you do it for? And what do you expect the next phase to be after that? For example, right now I'm finishing up a mini cut, which will have lasted about 12 weeks. A small deficit, which I started after my last 14-month lean bulk, yes, that was planned, to shred back on some fat without compromising any muscle. I'm doing this to allow myself to build some more muscle and keep fat the same, or maybe even lose some in a very tiny surplus for another 3 to 6 months after. Then I'm going to get ready for a standard cut after that to get to about 10% body fat or probably less, aiming for a sick photo shoot by the end of the year. Now notice how I have the entire year essentially planned out, at least somewhat roughly. You can't be perfect with this, of course, but for each stage, I set a target weight that will roughly get me into a good place to move to the next phase. So I'm going to end this cut at about 205 pounds, which is about 3.5 pounds away from now. Then I'm going to be pushing back up to around 210 to 212 over 6 months if all goes well, and then I'm going to shred down between 198 and 204 pounds. So now it's time to set your target. Now I do have a full video breaking down how to know if you should cut, bulk, or recomp in depth and for how long. So make sure you watch that and then set your target for the next 3 to 6 months. Then also decide what you're going to do after that. Map the entire year out. Remember, this is all a formula and a predictable process. If you miss your targets by a complete landslide by the end of this year, it means you had unrealistic expectations, or you're just simply missing key elements of the formula to make this process more predictable. And by the way, if you want my help setting all of this up along with your training, nutrition, and tracking, make sure to join the Physique Accelerator linked below. The key here is that flip-flopping back and forth between cutting or bulking is a big mistake. This lack of clarity is a big reason most people see mediocre results at best in their physiques year after year after year. So now that you've got your roadmap set up, it's time to lock in the right training approach. We're starting with training because it is actually the priority when the goal is maximum physique development. The truth is, once you understand the basics of nutrition and you aren't a lazy fuck, it becomes quite simple. Well, they are both pretty simple on the surface, but training hard year after year gets harder and harder over time, at least in my experience. Nutrition requires basically picking up the fork when needed, putting it down when needed. Make sure the right foods are on that fork for your calories and macros, and you're in a pretty good spot there. So for training, let's now break down the principles that are gonna help you maximize muscle growth over this coming year. And that goes regardless of if you're cutting, bulking, or recomping. So the first area to understand about your training is the focus of training. You see, the average gym bro sees training as something to go and get a sick pump, do a ton of reps and sets for volume, break a sweat, call it training to failure, and call it a day. But the focus of the session needs to be this: performance. Aiming to progressive overload on the best movements that work best for you over a long period of time. That's the key. Get as brutally strong as you can on the best lifts that produce the most muscle growth. This accounts for doing those lifts with proper form and in the right rep ranges, which I generally recommend will land you somewhere between 5 and 15 reps for most movements in general. This principle will get better results over the year than just chasing a pump and burning some calories will. Your goal is to get as much as you can out of every single set that you do, and this means take rest times between sets seriously. If you can hit the same reps with the same weight for every subsequent set, and you're resting less than 90 seconds between those sets, newsflash, you're leaving a lot of gains on the table. Now that might work for the first year of training and getting some noob gains, but it's not gonna work over longer periods of time. You're gonna find yourself not seeing much progress if you keep it up. Make sure your form is good on every rep, but avoid falling for the perfect robotic form ego trap. People that lift with such perfect form and then they sacrifice all the weight on the bar to do it don't realize this yet, but they are ego lifting just in a different way. and a pussier one. Now, another thing about training that's going to hold so many people back this year from seeing the best gains that they could is the hyper science-based trap. It makes people believe that any amount of fatigue is cancer. Doing more than 6 sets in a single session is worthy of a criminal record. And this leads to a lot of young men and women doing very low volumes and not maximizing their gains. Be careful that the science-based people that you follow would not rather sound and seem like all-powerful, all-knowing fitness authorities who know everything, then give you the best advice. I'll give you a hint. If they make black and white claims and they use science as a direct prescription for everything, they aren't as science-based as they probably made you believe. But that's a topic for another video. So spend a block of training dialing in on the best movements that feel best for you and that help you get the most growth. Those usually differ from person to person, by the way. And then focus the next 2 to 3 training blocks, let's say of 8 to 12 weeks apiece, on getting as strong on those as possible. You can even stick with them longer than that if you'd like, and within, say, a 5 to 15 rep range. Keep form clean, pushing each set close to failure, and you're gonna make some crazy gains. You're also gonna have some impressive strength as a bonus, and you give yourself the room to experiment more along this path. Avoid putting yourself in a box when it comes to something as open-ended and as flexible as training is. Influencers that push the never go above 8 reps put themselves in a box. If anyone ever caught them training above 8 reps in the future, they're gonna lose a ton of credibility. So they better love training like that for the next 10 years, or else their all-knowing house of cards will crumble. Now, let's break down the nutrition basics to ensure steady progress towards the goal you set on your roadmap. Make no mistake, the nutrition's primary function is to fuel training. The secondary function is to put you in a surplus or deficit while fueling your training. The building and retention of muscle is what we're after. Fat loss is simple, otherwise, so is fat mitigation. So the first step is setting calories and macros. In case you haven't done that yet, this is a straightforward process and it doesn't need longer than 5 minutes to set it for yourself. Here's the quick breakdown. First, use a TDEE calculator online, type in your stats, and get your estimated maintenance calories. Feel free to bump it up or down by about 5 to 10% depending on your current goal on the roadmap right now. Now, it's all an estimate. You're gonna get the actual understanding of where your calories and macros need to be after tracking for 2 weeks or so, in which case you can make any adjustments then, when, or if needed. Now, once calories are set your protein. The simplest way to do this is 1 gram per pound of your ideal future body weight. In other words, your body weight at its max potential muscle growth and at around 10 to 12% body fat for men, or 20 to 22% for women. You can use an FFMI calculator online to help determine this, but there's really no need. Use a somewhat educated guess based on your height, what your goal weight is in the future when you're gonna look absolutely sick and jacked, and set your protein at 1 gram per pound of that weight. Now, you can keep it there for the foreseeable future. And now that protein is set 25% of your total calorie target towards fats and fill the rest up with carbs. Now, this isn't 2014 anymore. By now, you should understand the following key thing. If you want the best possible result in your physique development, including recovery, satiety, health, energy, sleep, and all the rest, then you should be eating mostly nutrient-dense foods. I would even say almost entirely nutrient-dense foods. 4 or 5 cups of mixed vegetables per day, 2 to 3 pieces of fruit, lean, whole food protein sources, healthy fat sources, and a variety of nutrient-dense carb sources. Not leaning on 3 protein shakes a day and a gallon of milk with your fucking Fruity Pebbles to hit your protein goals. Protein supplements can be great, of course, to save some time here or there, but they should probably not make up more than 10 to 20% of your total protein intake across a week. Otherwise, your diet composition is probably trash. On that note, let's get back to basics across the board on everything food-wise. No disordered eating patterns of 1 meal a day or several small snacks a day. Unless you absolutely want to do that and you prefer it and you understand there's no inherent benefit to it, then that's totally fine. Sure, have snacks when it makes more sense for some freedom or flexibility. But for better satiety, recovery, performance, and hormone regulation, 3 to 4 whole square meals that are balanced in frequency and macronutrient composition is probably the best generalization of healthy eating behaviors, at least for now. It also makes life a lot easier as a result. Consistency is always king, as we know, but consistent timing of food for at least the majority of your week, along with consistently hitting the appropriate macros, is going to make it that much easier to reach your physique goals faster. It's also going to help build intuition, hormone balance, and relationship with food that is way more conducive to long-term health, satiety, and as a result, freedom and flexibility. This can essentially help you eat off plan when you deem it appropriate, which, by the way, with this healthy mindset, probably won't end up being twice every fucking weekend. Now, here is the key aspect that nobody ever talks about, but it will change everything for those of you who want to level up your physique progress now that we understand the basics. It is such a powerful concept that is actually baked directly into what drives human behavior at a basic level, and it also makes it fun and fulfilling and even addicting as a result. And it's this: gamify the entire process. Now, there's a reason video games are so insanely addicting, as well as social media and all the rest in our modern society. It's all gamified. Gamification increases the chance that you reach a goal few ever do, while making it more fun along the way. The thing is, almost no one realizes this, and even if they do, almost no one knows how to gamify something that isn't already gamified for them. Now imagine picking up this game that looks super cool, but when you go to open it, it's got all the pieces needed or the tools or whatever, the characters in the game, but it has no rule book or game manual. So how do you play it? How do you win? You don't. So if we can understand the fundamental rule book to any game, we can then play it properly and we can get better, so we level up until we master it. So how do we gamify the process of building a sick physique? We track 5 key data points specifically. Stay with me here. These 5 key data points are as follows: body weight every morning before eating or drinking anything and after using the restroom, and we use this to calculate weekly moving average body weight. Next is daily nutrition in the form of calories and macros, ensuring the body gets the right amount of raw materials needed for our goal. Next is daily or weekly training sessions and activity, meaning cardio and steps, to ensure rapid progression of strength and muscle growth. And number 4 and 5 is progress photos and body measurements, which will both be taken at the same time every 4 weeks to ensure that the physique indeed is moving towards the goal. Now, tracking things other than this is not really part of the game manual or mastering the game and ensuring you level up as fast as possible. Things like body fat percentage, fasting windows, supplement timing, sleep tracking, super closely at least, it's not directly correlated to leveling up necessarily, but it could be a nice bonus to add in should you so choose and if it makes sense. Regardless, for now, these 5 key metrics outlined above, tracking these things are going to turn it all into a game where you either hit targets or you don't. You either are moving in the right direction or you aren't. And you'll also better understand why. Now, there's always going to be the random faceless NPC that comments, "My bro works out 3 hours a month and is bigger than guys on juice without ever tracking anything." And even if that were true, he would see even better results by tracking. So sure, results could occur without it. You could luckily guess a few things right for a bit and go into the gym with no plan and see some strength gains at first. But again, that is a beginner and an amateur's mindset. Beginner and amateur mindsets do not ever master a domain or max out the potential in a specific endeavor in life. In fact, if you have the best genetics on planet Earth and you tracked nothing and you still looked better than everyone else, it's still a pretty big waste of potential relative to you. Tracking never makes you worse. It can only make you better, level up faster, and develop faster. Now, I understand if you don't currently track each of these things, it might seem overwhelming, but I assure you it's not. In the modern day, we have simple apps that make it a lot easier. And when choosing the best ones and the best way to make them talk to each other properly, it makes it super easy to streamline this whole process and gamify things. I actually put the system together for you in my free complete physique bundle, which you can grab instantly for free down below. So now you've got the entire game plan and the game manual to master this game, your roadmap, training, nutrition, and the tracking setup. But here's the thing, planning is always the easy part. Reading the game rules are simple, but to level up and master this game, you have to execute and keep improving throughout it. As you track your data, gather feedback, as you feel through your training, as you go day to day and see how you feel, and how your energy levels are, how your recovery feels, how your eating schedule feels, and so on, you start to accumulate more and more depth to your understanding of all of this. You start to understand context and its importance. You start to understand why sleep is so key, how it affects your recovery and hunger levels. You start to understand how and when to adjust your nutrition to keep steady pace of loss or gain that you're aiming to achieve. You start to understand what proper meal composition looks and feels like, what real satiety is. You start to better be able to predict fluctuations on the scale. You start to build an intuition for when things go off routine, as they inevitably will. And that's the beauty of this game and why so few ever reach the top 1% physiques naturally, despite having all of this information at their disposal. Because it's not a set it and forget it thing. It's a living, breathing process that always has to be adjusted and optimized and reacted to depending on how or when variables change constantly. So now, I've armed you, hopefully, with the right understanding of the key things needed to take your physique to the next level. All that's left is relentless execution of these boring basics until the results show. It might be 3 months for significant changes. It might be 3 years before you see the addicting reward. Probably closer to 3 years to be fair, but as long as you keep playing the game properly and you keep playing to get better, the unglorious actions needed day in and day out will lead to the glorious results in the end. And more than in just your physique, but your entire life will become better as a result of the discipline and mastery that you end up with. So for those of you who are ready to do that, I'll be seeing you at the top.